Hey, Mega Code here, and today we're going to be talking about fantasy football and keepers because we're halfway through the fantasy season officially in week 7. So, today's advice, starting off, Abel, my good friend, asked me to tell him what to do with Adrian Peterson. Here is the advice for Adrian Peterson. I am in 6 leagues, Dynasty League. The advice on him is I'd let him go. Unfortunately, if you're giving up a high pick, because there's drafts where you have to get rid of the pick that you took him at, and I took him early. So I would let him go. If you don't get penalized, I would keep him for another year if you can keep your entire team and then draft a rookie running back with my pick. If you have only 3 keepers, a QB, receiver, running back, I would keep another running back, let Adrian Peterson go, unfortunately. And if you have a flex keeper, so you have a QB, receiver, running back, and a flex, I would then keep Adrian Peterson because his upside's huge, and look forward to the next year of taking a young rookie to replace him. The other advice you could do on this one is you could actually take this year, and if your team isn't competitive, if it is competitive, you keep Adrian Peterson, don't sell the farm. But if your team is like a 1-5, 2-4 at this point, you could actually look into selling your team, keep Ezekiel, try to get Ezekiel Elliott and keep, or if you have him, keep him, trade for another younger running back, and move forward for next year. Battle it out next year if you're not going to win this year. Now on to quarterback advice, because everybody always asks, what do you do? The last 2 years it was Manning and Brady. Now Brady's left because Manning retired, unfortunately. My advice for Brady is I go younger. I really do. I try to keep a quarterback like Stafford, Luck, Newton, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Those would probably be some of my top 5s this year, as well as Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. If you're a younger team, like I was saying before, not winning it this year, I would keep those guys for sure, just because Dak Prescott's roof is high because the Cowboys have a pretty good offense and a good O-line in front of them, and Carson Wentz has kind of come down to earth the last 2 weeks, but Carson Wentz is going to be a good player. He's had to make a lot of big plays for them, and without the help right now, that's why his numbers are kind of going down a little. On to receivers, the biggest question, and I made this move in the offseason. Brandon Marshall was rated high. What do you do with an older receiver? I let them go, and I keep my younger guy. I had Amari Cooper in that league. I kept him, let Marshall go, and Marshall ended up falling to me at the end of the first round anyway, so I could keep him. You just can't stick to the books. You have to make your own advice and write it down and go by it, and don't get swayed by the way the draft goes. If you're high on a guy, draft him. Another question people are going to ask is tight ends. Who do you keep? I would start looking at Gronk is my only keeper tight end ever usually, but if you're in a league where you have to keep a tight end, try to get Henry from San Diego. He's going to be great for years. You saw what Gates did for years there, and what Rivers always likes to go to his shutdowns. And on defense, the biggest advice I can give to fantasy players if you have an IDP league is go for tackles. Tackles, and look in the past seasons. If they have a ton of sacks, if they have 15 sacks in a season 3 times, okay, you can trust that. If it's 1 year they have 15 or 20 sacks, then you have to kind of consider if you have another player, a D lineman that gets more tackles and they're pretty close, I'd keep the guy with more tackles because tackles usually are more consistent than sacks. Thank you for listening.